Brittle recipe that Fran shared with her class. She has been my saving grace all these years because my daughter learned to cook because of Fran's Simmermaker.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You made my day.
Well, now, how did you meet Fran?
Well, fast forward, reverse to Seymour High School, and I was living in Bloomington in a rooming house, and one of the other roomers was getting all gussied up in front of the mirror, and I had to ask him, "What's up? Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I'm going to Seymour. My girlfriend is a home ec teacher in Seymour." And I said, "Hey, wonder if there are any more home ec teachers in Seymour?" And he said, "Yes, there is. A matter of fact, it's a new teacher. Maybe I can introduce you." And together, he and his home ec teacher friend arranged a date, a double date with Sam and Frank. So predictably, it was at the Shields Gym, the old Seymour Shields Gym.
No, well.
Fran was taking tickets and chaperoned a dance after the game.
I was probably there.
Patience being my virtue, we waited, or I waited, and we later had our first date, double date, and we wound up, and I think I can tell this, Charlotte, it was at the Medora Tavern. And we sipped hot chocolate. And a couple of years later, we were married, and that's the end of that story.
May I interject 2 questions? He asked me about a beverage, and I said, I don't know, and he said, "You don't drink, do you?" And I said, "No." Then he said, "You don't smoke either, do you?" And I said, "No." And I thought right then, well, he thinks he's out with adults. Because I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I worked at the ball game because they paid me $2.50 to take tickets, and I needed the money. And I saw Top was a volunteer thing, and I thought, boy, this is a wild evening for sure. So he'll never be back. So.
Her hometown was Campbellsburg, probably about 1,000 larger than Star City.
Well, I saw in the paper that this is your 63rd year of broadcasting. And why did you want to become a broadcaster? Did you have somebody you favored that you really liked?
Good question. I initially wanted to be a sports writer, and I devoured the Chicago Tribune and South Bend Tribune. But somewhere along the line, an epiphany maybe, decided, why don't you enter the field where you can call the action as it happens, as opposed to writing about it and people can't read about it until the next day. So I think that's how it happened.
Well, one of the questions that I prepared for Sam was, how does he prepare for a game? Does he talk to coaches? Does he have a staff of 10 that does all of his research? Does he do internet searches? How do you prepare for a game?
You're looking at my staff, right? Preparation, back in the day, the rage was a spotting chart, about this wide, this high, and you could slave over preparing that for days before a game. And I can remember papers spread all over the living room floor, and there I am with the marking pen, preparing this spotting chart. Well, that was too much work, and I couldn't find what I was looking for anyway. Once the game started, I had to. So I simply picked up a program at the gate on the way in with all the numbers, and
Learn from there.
that's exactly right. That's a military secret, though. Oh, and of course, we do the obligatory coaches interviews, and I do check the internet for tidbits.
Yeah.
That's kind of my stock and trade.
You don't
Is it
check the internet,
tidbits?
you didn't check the internet before because it,
Oh, that's right, well, that's true.
yeah.
But I think the parents back in the day were more accessible, let's put it that way. Now, most of the parents have 3 or 4 children, and they're all playing at least 2 sports apiece. And soccer, of course, has exploded. And they're not at all their son or daughter's basketball or football games anymore. They're with somebody else in a dance event or a soccer game, and you just don't run into the parents and develop the friendships that you used to. Would that be a fair statement, right?
Well, what do you see as the biggest change in high school athletics since you began broadcasting 63 years ago?
Will you please stop?
That was in the paper, I got that out of the paper.
Well, the paper's not always accurate.
Well, that's true. That's true, but I got that out of the paper. What do you think's the biggest change?
Well, of course, Title IX, bringing ladies on the scene. Thank goodness that happened. That's the biggest change. But just for me personally, it is, and this is kind of a trite reason really, the lack of nicknames. I used to enjoy dubbing players with a nickname or using one that they had carried all through their younger days. And we had the Snake. We had the Spider. We had the Whale, Steve Wellmer. You guys remember, let's see, Fred Eddy, I believe, was the Spider. The Whale, of course, Steve Wellmer. Francis Probst was the Wildcat. Ronnie Sprague, I don't know if anybody remembers Ronnie Sprague. He was a good-sized fella. He was the Monster. You couldn't get by with that these days. But it was fun at the time. Now, a fellow by the name of, anybody remember Monty Gines? I dubbed him the Pepper Pot. And that was okay then and probably would have been okay now. But every time I run into him, or if he calls me or whatever, he says, "Hey Sam, this is the Pepper Pot." So that one stuck, but I haven't had much luck. Now we have 2 Horn cousins that are playing at North, and I've tried this beep, beep in basketball when Horn makes a bucket, but that hasn't caught it. It did at Ball State, but his dad played at Ball State, but not anymore. Or is, yeah, so that's the biggest change.
Did you have a favorite game that you liked to broadcast or that you broadcasted?
1968, Columbus High School versus Shelbyville Regional Championship. Steve Wellmer outdueled Big Wes Miller of the Shelbyville Golden Bears. Bulldogs came from behind, won the game, and went on to semi-state. And an unlikely, untimely, unseemly loss to Shortridge, of all people. But we had Mike Vincent, Tony Lanham, Kurt Denny, Tom Arnold, and Big Steve Wellmer. Greatest game I ever saw at Memorial Gym. Probably the greatest venue in the state, if you check all the boxes. Newcastle may have more seats, Seymour may be newer, but Memorial Gymnasium, there's just something about it. Ambiance, maybe, I don't know.
You hear the ghosts?
That's right.
Do you have a least favorite game that you broadcast or least favorite sport?
I'm sorry.
Football.
Oh, football is
Can't see the
difficult
numbers.
for me, and you cannot, if you've been to a football game lately, Columbus North now has morphed to the black predominantly uniforms, and all due respect to former North folks and current people here. But with a black jersey and purple numbers, come on. And then all the actions usually at one end of the gridiron or the other. And I do think they need to take a look at their lighting, both at north and east. But that hasn't been changed in eons. But football is my least favorite sport because I find it more difficult.
Yeah, I can understand that. Well, now, if both Columbus teams are playing, what determines which team you will broadcast?
The gentleman who is the lead announcer at the other radio station that covers the games in town, he and I get together and decide who's going where.
Okay.
I try to stay away from the road games if possible. For one thing, it's less expensive for the station, saves station money if you don't travel a lot. But we will not do the same game, except east and north.
Yeah.
That's the only time we'll have a conflict.
They know Tom Russ. So
Yeah, Tom Rust,
You
who is
work
a
well.
wonderful gentleman and well, in fact, he's just retiring as the pastor at Sardinia Baptist Church, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's had that position for a long time, and he also has a program that airs on the internet, and it is, and I can't think of the name of it now. But in any event, it's face to face, thank you. Yeah, but we get together and we will not duplicate a broadcast. And he is so accommodating. Example, he will go to Southport with North, thank you Tom, Friday night, and I'll stay here with Seymour and East. So he doesn't seem to mind those road trips, so more power to him.
Is there anything that would limit your broadcasting a sporting event? Maybe illness or maybe weather? Back out in the rain? Snow? Can you think of anything offhand?
We have not run into too many weather-related situations where that would cause a game to be canceled or a broadcast. We have several times had, especially in football, a lightning delay, and we've filled with items that I brought along due to my preparation, Charlotte.
Yes, your staff.
And my staff, yes. But haven't had any problems for a year or two in that regard. A funny thing happened on the way to the gymnasium. When we first came to Columbus, there was not much local sports broadcasting because the schools would not permit it, fearing attendance would dip as a result of radio. Seymour, Rushville, Shelbyville, Franklin, and so on, all were like us in Columbus. We couldn't do the games. Bloomington could. They were a little bigger and apparently had more clout. Within a decade, this would have been, say, between 1960 and 1970, the various cities apparently got together and lobbied the schools, and they all started getting radio stations. They hadn't had radio before in Rushville or Seymour, Connersville, Shelby. And these folks then put pressure on schools, and bingo, in the next few years after that, we were allowed to do games. Marion County schools had a $50 rights fee, believe it or not. Southport, Perry Meridian, those people, if you wanted to broadcast a game, Kokomo, from their location, it was $50. So that took us out of the running for those games. But with all the small town radio stations cropping up almost simultaneously, the landscape changed and we were able to broadcast, and now there's no rights fee anywhere. Thing of the past, thank goodness.
Tell me how you view today's athlete as compared to the athletes that you broadcast about in your earlier days.
Oh, they talk about the athletes these days on TV being bigger, stronger, faster, better conditioned. I don't think there's that much change. Columbus North has a gentleman, Tyler Blythe. He plays football, basketball, and baseball. And that's almost unheard of in this day and age because, for one thing, each sport now has become a year-round engagement, if you will. But I think I could stack Tyler up against the Keels, the Mike Phippses of the past. I don't think there's that much change. Do you, Fran? You think there's that much change? You think there is?
Everybody wants a scholarship now. And I don't think that was evident early on that we all worked toward getting some kind of scholarship in schools. And I think that's the goal of many parents now, is to have their child receive an academic scholarship through a sports event. That to me is a big change. I didn't even go to games when I first came to Columbus because I couldn't get a ticket. And they'd say to me, "You can't get a ticket?" I said, "No, you gotta go stand in line at a drawing," and I had a child to take care of, and I didn't go to games. So to me, that's a big change too, is the interest is not there, and the fact that parents are wanting their child to get a scholarship. And you can't blame them.
No.
The cost of college, you can't blame them, but it seems to be a little bit of pressure on the child too, to excel, you know.
May I interrupt this conversation to...
Sorry, I'm not supposed to talk.
No, you are. To tip my hat to this lady for being alongside for some 60 years and a lot of lonely Friday nights, including one tomorrow night. So, thank you. Thank you.
On the phone call, oh gosh, the coach is calling the house, and our children, when they knew the kids, they would take it. Now, thank goodness, there's an answering machine because of all the foreign names that I couldn't even spell or pronounce. And the coaches have trouble too, pronouncing some of the names of the kids. So I am so grateful for a recorder. Don't call my house on Friday night, I don't answer. I put it on the recording machine because I just, you know, it took a lot of time to write all those names down.
But I did get Spellbar right. I think I may have checked with you.
Well, we know you're a Cardinals fan by your
Correct.
shirt. And
Also, the bags under my eyes after getting home at 1:30 this morning from the Reds Cardinals game last night, which went 13 innings. You stayed up, right, Al?
I heard about it.
Oh.
So how did you become a Cardinals fan from northern Indiana?
Well, again, good question. All the aficionados and kids my age back in the day were either one, Dodgers, two, Yankees, because they were the front runners back then, or the Cubs and the White Sox because of the geographical closeness. So I wanted to be different, and I liked the uniforms, and I think they had some up-and-coming players, a guy named Musial, I think, for one, and the rest is history. It just kind of happened, and I've been fortunate in that they've been basically a winning team, I think. But I must admit to all of you that I am an addict. I'm not a Cardinal fan, I'm not a Cardinal fanatic. I'm a Cardinal addict. I'm not proud of it. I thought I could outgrow it. Fran, how's that going?
Not yet.
Still working on it.
Yeah, it's work in progress. I don't know, if the Cardinals had won last night, I probably would have been slightly out of kilter today.
Well, tell us about your special made boots.
The boots. Well, of course, East and North in about, 1972, and shortly thereafter, Gene Tovey, the late Gene Tovey, Tovey Shoe Company downtown, came up with the idea that I should be impartial, visibly, and as a result we have these. And he put "Holy Cow" inside each boot. You can't, it's there. Yeah, "Holy Cow" it says. And these are Floorshine, by the way. It's a high budget operation. So I used to, the cheer block would holler, "Hey Sam, say Sam, show us your boots," or something like that. If Columbus North or East was doing something heroic. So I toss it up in the air and catch it. Again, you can't get away with that kind of stuff. So that's it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of you may or may not know, but our own Jonathan Titus works with Sam on a lot of his broadcasts. Does he do all three sports or just the football and basketball?
He does basketball and someone else does football.
Okay.
But he would help out in a pinch. But John Titus, I owe him so much because, and all these folks know John?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, he's a wonderful human being. And secondly, I think he's been with me for like 20 years now. And so loyal, so dependable, so talented. He is grade A color person.
Does his homework.
Oh, does his homework, does his preparation chart. Puts me in the shade.
He's a teacher.
As a teacher, that's right. So he has a leg up on that type of work.
Do any of you have any questions that you would like to ask Sam
Or Fran.
or Fran?
What do you think about the small schools that have all been swallowed up in combination schools and
Consolidation.
consolidation?
Right, well, Star City was swallowed up by Winnemac, and Campbellsburg was swallowed up by West Washington. What do I think about it? Had to happen, I guess.
I guess.
And it's so sad to see the demise of the small town, Star City, Campbellsburg.
Milltown.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
You know who was from Milltown, I think, is your cohort
Conrad.
at Seymour. He was Rex Crecelius or
Oh,
something.
yeah. He dated my sister. It's probably a different one. It's probably a different
Well,
one.
I doubt it. Rex Crecelius.
Yeah.
Gotta be the same one.
How many of you rode fan buses to the games when you were in high school? Yeah, that was a big thing, wasn't it? Yeah. All we had was a church and the schools for entertainment. And we rode the fan buses. We didn't miss a game, you know? So to me, the school became the social life of the young people and the parents, and that's no longer. In fact, if you go to a high school game right now, you'll be shocked how few there are there in attendance. And the kids are going to see the Colts and the Indianapolis Pacers and their college teams. They're not going to the high school games, and that to me is sad. But then that's because of my background, that was a big part of our life, you know.
And the towns that were anchored by those schools
No, nothing.
are now just disintegrating. Star City, the main street, we now have actually nothing on that main street. We used to have a bank, a post office, a filling station, a store, or 2 or 3, a restaurant or 2. Zip, nothing, absolutely nothing. With 220 people, Charlotte, not much traffic.
There's not much going on.
No stoplights. Of course, we never had a stoplight. And the elevator burned down, so.
There you go. Is anybody else?
I really thought, back when the little schools was in, that kids learnt more from the little school than they do now in the big school. Today, in the big schools, you're a number. I mean, back when I was in school, in my class, we had 12 or 13. And they knew every kid, they knew them by their name, how many brothers and sisters they had, and what they did, whether they go to the farm or all that stuff. Now, they don't know any of that.
Well, Fran can tell you about the demise of home economics.
Yeah.
Exhibit A. No,
I was at National in Kansas City when they voted to change the name from Home Ec to Family and Consumer Science, which FAA, and I stood up among 300 people and I said, ladies and gentlemen, you have lost your identity. I'm sorry that sounds negative, but you have lost your identity. You ask a principal what that stands for, and he says it's a machine, a fax machine that copies things. Yeah, they didn't know what those abbreviations stands for. So, you know, and the subject matter, there are no teachers being trained, and it's just down, it's no longer of value, so.
Fran has gotten kudos through the years, and she'll hear feedback years later from students, especially I think at those early years in Seymour, Charlotte, that Fran would not only teach cooking and sewing, but she delved into some of the more taboo subjects that helped her students, such as the birds and the bees, correct?
No wonder I haven't been fired, so. I mean, I'm 20 and they're 18 and one girl has a baby already, and I'm teaching family and marriage in the home, and I did do some sex education. I did. I told the girls the boy can walk away. The boy can walk away. The girl cannot. And it's a wonder I haven't been fired, you know, but I just wanted them to know that you are going to be the one that's going to raise this child. So you make the decision, not the young man. And again, it's a wonder I hadn't been fired. Today I might be, I don't know. So.
Anybody else have a question?
Mr. Spellwater. I wanted to say that name.
I was wondering, I noticed that Mike Bodart is now the head coach at North.
Yes, sir.
And I was wondering what happened to Pat Antone. What was the situation? Did he leave or did they let him go?
Mike Bodart is it's a long-time Columbus family. I think the Bodarts may be from Vincennes originally, but they've had 3 sons, including Mike, that played football, baseball. And Mike has sought out the North coaching job in the past, did not get it. Then here, all of a sudden, he is the head coach, thanks to his predecessor leaving after 1 year. And as to why that happened, I have no idea, and if I did, I wouldn't want to mention it, but I think he just felt that he went to Roncalli as head coach. And I don't know how that resonates enrollment-wise. I would think it's a smaller school, but probably more money and maybe a chance to continue up the ladder. I don't know what his aspirations are, but we're happy that a hometown kid, so to speak, Mike Bodart, who is the owner of Hoosier Sporting Goods, by the way, downtown, and a great fellow. And he'll do fine, I think, as North's new head baseball coach. Can't answer your question, sir.
Well,
No.
the only reason I ask is he came from around Valparaiso. My son now is in Valparaiso, and my grandson plays baseball, and had him for a coach for a short time.
He coached Western Boone, the Pat Antone, the previous North coach, coached Western Boone to a state championship, I think in his only year there, and then he left to go someplace else and then to Columbus North. So he's climbing the ladder, and best wishes.
Yeah. Well, my son felt that he was a good coach and did a lot of instruction that he didn't get in other places, so he was fond of them, and
Gotcha.
that's why he came here.
Well, he apparently has a lot on the ball, a lot to offer, and Ron Colley must have liked his resume, so.
Dennis, did you have a question?
I have a comment about the Simmermakers, and they may not remember this. We were in Arby's, and I think they were there, we were there, probably one of them, and the staff just started spewing expletives and just, I mean, it's something terrible. Mrs. Simmermaker called them out on it, and we thanked her for it, and I actually went home and wrote a letter to corporate saying what had happened, and I appreciated Simmermakers calling them out on that.
Again, my mouth is I think they don't realize that there's people that are offended, you know, and I think they need to, especially if they're working in a public place, so. Ask my children if I don't tell them what I think, so.
She was talking about the phone, and now, by the way, the internet is also helpful in that regard, cuts down on the phone calls. But back in the day, when we were getting 20 and 30 calls a night, my daughter she would like to be on the phone once in a while, and she would go about 2 blocks up the street on Union Street to Dietz's Market, 23rd and Union, something like that, and use their payphone to talk to her cronies. Because her dad was, of course, monopolizing the phone at home.
Gail?
And I'll just say that I want to thank you two for inviting me to sit in the back of your car out of the cold, waiting for the girls' state champion cross-country team to get home to celebrate.
That was just recent, yeah.
Yes, because Leslie Weaver is our daughter.
Anybody else?
Fran was not enamored by her introduction to cross-country. Back several years ago, she saw a couple of the runners get ill
Oh,
at the conclusion of the race, and
Kind of.
not an unusual scene.
First time I'd ever seen that, I went to the state meeting, these boys came over and they vomited. And I said to Sam, are they all right? And he said, oh, they do that all the time, and I thought, that's fun. That is fun to run so hard you vomit.
Well, that's what I always used to say, if you didn't vomit or wet your pants at the end, you didn't run hard.
Well, I tell you, my admiration for those kids kind of went up more, so. They run by our house all the time because they go down to the river to, we live right, my son used to say, in the inner city, Mom. And I said, well, it's good, isn't it? No, he wanted to be north of 25th Street because that's where the parties happen. When I said to him, well, let's have a party here, you know? He said, no. I said, why not? And he said, because you won't lie on the alcohol. And I said, well, yeah, I won't. You're my here. So he said, but they'll bring it anyway, Mom, and I don't want to put you under that pressure. So they'll sneak it in other words, so. But then he would go to the party. Or in another house. So I said, okay, you better walk home if things get rowdy, so.
Well, we really and truly thank you so much for coming.
We appreciate
It's
it.
been a pleasure to have you.
60s, maybe even in the 50s.
You can stop right there.
I came to Columbus in 1958 from Chris Spring, Jackson County,
Oh, yeah.
okay? But I played basketball a lot with Columbus boys. And there was one boy, and I can't remember his name, but he could do anything with basketball. And I went to some of the Columbus North games, but he didn't get to play. And I said, "How come you're not on the basketball team?" He said, I'm on the wrong side of the track. Now, did they, I mean, back then, I don't know, did they, you had to have money or something to play?
That is an age-old comment that you hear, and Bill Stearman himself was basically from, quote, the other side of the tracks. His dad, Bill Stearman, the legendary Columbus North basketball coach,
Yeah.
the late Bill Stearman, his dad cleaned the Citizens Building and Loan Building in downtown Columbus. He was a janitor there, so that didn't smack of money. So and in fact, Bill Stearman is credited with really raising from almost, we could say, the gutter, and I don't think he would object, he's passed away now, but would object to my mentioning Butch Wade. Butch had a troubled youth, and Bill literally lifted him up to the heights, and the same goes for, well, Jerry Newsom to a certain extent, Steve Hollenbeck. They all owe an awful lot to William Stearman, and none of them were from affluent families. I think, but I've heard that since the day I came to town.
Well,
And it's still, believe it or not, kind of surfaces every once in a while.
If you were raised in Columbus,
I beg your pardon?
if you were raised in Columbus, that was just something you heard of or something like that. So it was something you were aware. I don't know if it was true or not, but being raised in Columbus, that was just kind of something you kind of knew. I don't know.
I think it was an excuse, perhaps.
Might have been.
There was so much talent in the 60s that a lot of
One
people...
school and one
Oh, yeah,
school.
and that's right, and only one school. But I think that the person you're referencing, believe it or not, there may have been several better players than he.
well, we just played like in the boys club or outside, but he could do anything with basketball.
Donner courts were popular back in the day. In fact, Coach Stearman would come over to the playground, and he wanted his players to be there as much as they could away from the gymnasiums. And during the summers, my goodness, that was the rite of passage, if you will, was to get on a team and play ball at Donner, and hey, Mr. Stearman back among the trees and the shrubs watching.
Well, you couldn't organize it. You
Yeah.
had to.
Exact, good point, yeah, I should have mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, there were elementary schools that did not have gyms. My children went to Garfield and they closed it, and then they went to McKinley and they closed it. There was not a gym at either of those schools, you know. So the Garfield kids had to go up to North real early on Saturday morning to practice. They didn't have a gym.
I must tell you that right now, Shar, excuse me, I get more enjoyment out of putting tidbits, scores on Facebook than I do broadcasting. Maybe that's my one-time desire to be a sports writer coming to the surface.
Sorry. Amber alert.
Everybody's getting that.
If anybody is not friends with myself on Facebook, I invite you to friend me, however you do that. And we'll give you some little tidbits from time to time. Columbus North alum Devin Mann is playing for the Dodgers AAA Farm Club and doing very well. And gosh, people from all over are excelling at high levels, and I get some of that on Facebook that you might be interested in. Is here anybody in here Al, are we Facebook friends?
I think so.
I hope
But
so.
I have a thing from you, something, and that's like, do you know who died type thing. It's not that came across
It's just sports tidbits, no family pictures, no pets, no food. Strictly sports.
I'll send you a request.
Okay.
Who's lost on the hammer? Who's lost
There's something maybe.
in Indianapolis?
John?
Yes?
Yeah.
Nobody else has any questions, then we'll have John pray for the food and we'll have lunch.
I forgot you guys did not know how to pray.
And I know that's
How are you?
I know that's what your sermons have been about, but I haven't been here for. Also, Karen has brought, you can have cupcakes or a piece of cake if you are an August birthday. Do we have any August birthdays?
Yeah. What about September? This is September.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is
right.
September.
My birthday.
Logan.
Yes, Donna's birthday in September.
My dad's.
Yeah.
Question. Sir, are you related to the basketball Seastings?
Yes.
The
Jim
one
is
that
exactly
played
my
for you.
age. He was at Martinsville when I was at Bloomington South, and he was called Super J at Martinsville. All Bloomington South called me Super J as a joke. We gave all the family athletic talent to Jerry. And then I never could follow him because he was at Martinsville and Bloomington South did not like Martinsville. Then he was at Purdue and I'm a Hoosier. That's not good. But finally, and then he was a Pacer, but it was a bad Pacer team. But eventually he's a Celtic and on the championship team, so that was fun times. That was when I claimed him after all that. He's like a second cousin. So, my dad and his dad are double cousins, which is something that apparently happens in Martinsville.